Everyone is talking about the Google Pixel 3a. It's just one of those phones that has a relatively cheap price tag like Google's old Nexus lineups, and it provides a modernized experience that's very similar to its bigger brother, the Pixel 3. Maybe you're in the market for one, so here are 5 things you'll really enjoy about the Pixel 3a and 5 things you'll be missing out on or you might find annoying. Let's start it off on a positive note. The biggest reason why so many people are talking about this thing, aside from the phone being created by Google, is that it's only $400. That's half of what the Pixel 3 costs. If you want the XL model, it's an extra $80. So what corners were cut to make this phone so cheap? Well, typically with a budget smartphone, you're probably expecting a crappy build, a mediocre camera, and a 1080p LCD display, while all the other specs are comparable to what some of the top tier flagships have. Google took a different approach. Instead of including the fastest processor, they focus on the camera. It may not have a Quad HD panel, but it's still OLED. It may not have a premium aluminum glass build, but it still keeps a lot of the same hardware features found within the Pixel 3. Let's talk about those topics in detail. First off, hands down the best feature within this device is the rear camera. It's a copy and paste from the Pixel 3 rear sensor. It has the same megapixels, aperture size, OIS, records in the same video resolution, has the same camera software including all the modes, AR stickers, night sight, and unlimited Google Photos cloud storage. So pictures taken on a Pixel 3a will look similar, if not the same, to those taken on a regular Pixel 3. That being said, since the Pixel 3 rear sensor is considered by most to be the best on the market, the Pixel 3a also has the best camera. You're not going to find a budget smartphone that even comes close to producing the same kind of photos that this phone produces, unless of course you're considering an older predecessor like the Pixel 2. The only thing missing from the 3a's camera is Google's Pixel Visual Core. If you're wondering what that is, it's basically a chip that's designed to help with the Pixel's HDR+ image processing, so without it, when taking pictures, images will take a bit longer to process and the camera performance won't be as great. Still, the difference in camera performance between the Pixel 3a and the Pixel 3 isn't that noticeable, so you'll be fine. Also, I thought I should mention this real quick. There's a new camera mode called time-lapse, which if you haven't already guessed, lets you make time-lapse videos. The third best thing about the Pixel 3a is the software. It has the same exact interface found in the Pixel 3. Personally, I've always been a fan of the Pixel software, not only because of the basis for stock Android or that their software design is immensely beautiful, but because of their unique exclusive software features. Things like Google's call screen to avoid wasting my time with scam calls, Google Duplex only in the US to make Google Assistant do things like make restaurant reservations for you, the Now Playing feature which lets you know what song is currently playing around you, Active Edge so I can squeeze the phone to bring up the assistant, digital well-being to monitor my phone's usage and limit the amount of time that I use an app, and to top it all off, the Pixels are always the first in line to receive the latest Android software update. The 3a is no exception to this rule, and it'll continue to be updated for a minimum of 3 years, which is a long time. So there's no need to worry if you decide to keep using this phone for a couple of years from now. The display is another feature that Google didn't cheap out too much on. Even though they did drop the resolution to 1080p, it still provides good detail with very accurate colors. And I love that it's still an OLED panel. If they had gone with an LCD screen, then all their work when trying to enable dark mode would have gone to waste on this device, since the only way you can save battery with a dark theme is if you have an OLED display. And on top of that, with an OLED screen, I can still use Google's always on ambient display. Also, if it wasn't already obvious, the Pixel 3a doesn't have that infamous notch that came with the Pixel 3 XL, and for that reason alone, it does have a bigger bezel, edges, and a slightly larger chin. Depending on whether or not you prefer a notch over bigger bezels, for some, this may be a hit or miss situation. Lastly, even though the hardware was one of the few things that Google had to cut corners on, more on that later, there's still a lot of hardware features that the Pixel 3a kept from its bigger brother. It still has a fingerprint sensor on the back, the volume rocker and power button are incredibly tactile and feel nice when you click them, the haptic feedback is still amazing, you still get the color accent on the power key, and as I said before, it still has the squeeze feature called Active Edge, which no other budget competitor has. I also love how they threw in the 3.5mm headphone jack, not because they planned on bringing it back, but because Google figured that most people looking to purchase a phone in this price range may not have bought an expensive Bluetooth headset just yet. So props to Google for thinking about their audience. Before I move on to 5 of the worst features, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. This website is a great way to learn about a broad range of interesting topics. They have more than 25,000 classes to join and learn about something new. Topics covered include content for creators, photography, business, technology, etc. More specifically, if you're trying to start a YouTube channel, they have great tutorials for lighting, cinematography, tutorials for Adobe Premiere, After Effects, and more. Or maybe you're trying to start a business and need some advice from successful entrepreneurs. They have that. Music production, mobile development, web development, marketing, writing, graphic design, you name it, they have it. Personally, I signed up for a color grading course to improve my colors within my videos, a Python course, a few entrepreneurship classes, and a productivity class to better organize my busy schedule. Their premium membership, which gives you unlimited access to all their classes and communities, isn't even that expensive. Getting their annual subscription is less than $10 a month. However, the first 500 people who use the link in the description to sign up will get a 2-month free trial, so give Skillshare a try, especially if you want to learn a few new things in 2019. Let's switch it over to 5 of the worst features found within the Google Pixel 3a. Just a heads up, some of these complaints could be seen as nitpicks. They are undesirable features, but nothing that ruins the phone in my opinion. The first worst thing about the Pixel 3a is just all the features that Google removed to cut the price in half. Here's a list of things that you no longer have. First off, there's no official IP rating for water resistance, so try not to drop this thing in a pool or your toilet. It also doesn't have wireless charging. There's no extra front-facing camera. No front-facing speakers, kind of. I mean, it does have a bottom-firing unit, and it uses the earpiece as an additional speaker, so at least they did that. For those who are on T-Mobile, that network has decided not to support RCS messaging for this device, and you also get no Pixel earbuds out of the box. I wouldn't worry too much about that though, since they're not that great in my opinion. The second worst thing is the build quality. The entire back is made out of polycarbonate material, aka plastic, so of course when holding the 3a it feels a lot lighter and cheaper than the Pixel 3. It's also a lot more slippery to hold, so I decided to pick up a custom knit case by Google. I love how the case itself also has an accent color for the power key, but don't get me wrong, I don't mind having a plastic build. As long as this $400 Pixel has most of the same features found within the Google Pixel 3, and it does. Now the performance isn't horrible. Matter of fact, even on a Snapdragon 670, it still runs smooth and opens apps quickly. Playing games is also not a disappointment. However, the screen latency doesn't feel as perfect as the Pixel 3 when scrolling through apps, but that's just a nitpick. The only thing I am worried about is that the Pixels don't have a great history of performing well in the long run. This includes the Pixel 3 and the Pixel 2, and those flagships were running top of the line hardware. I'm not saying that it's guaranteed that the Pixel 3a will tremendously slow down in the future, but if it does, even for a few people, I wouldn't be surprised. Another thing that kind of sucks about the Pixel 3a is that you can only purchase this device with 64GB of internal storage and only 4GB of RAM. It would have been nice if Google would have at least given us the option to upgrade the phone to 128GB of internal storage and 8GB of RAM, especially considering that most apps nowadays have a relatively large file size, and some have offline features which can also take up a ton of space, including Spotify's offline music, Netflix's offline video saving feature, or Google Maps' offline maps feature. And if you're a gamer, those 3D graphic games are also not very friendly when it comes to storage space. If they did want to give us an extra option for storage, they should have at least thrown in an SD card slot for expandable storage. 4GB of RAM is also a bit of a stretch on Android Pie, especially if you're like me and have multiple apps continually running in the background. To put it in perspective, on my Galaxy S10 Plus, I usually consume around 4 to 5GB of RAM, which is pretty scary considering that the Pixel 3a already consumes half of my RAM without any apps running in the background. The Pixel 3a just isn't the best choice for someone who is an app addict such as myself. The last worst thing about this phone is that physically it's not appealing. It looks like something that would have been released 2 to 3 years ago. It has no exciting modern feature that a top tier flagship has, such as a bezel-less display, an extra ultra wider telephoto lens, pop-up front facing camera, or an in-display fingerprint reader. And I get it, Google isn't trying to push for anything crazy or unique with a budget smartphone. I'm just pointing out the facts here. If you're getting this phone, it's a simple device. A simple device with a great camera, a great display, excellent battery life, and Google's amazing software, all for just $400. This phone is for someone like your average Joe, who just wants a cheap smartphone released this year, which will last them several years. Or for someone who only cares about the camera within a smartphone like a photographer. Or maybe someone who's on a budget but still wants to obtain the latest and greatest software updates, such as a college student. If you're in the market and looking at this device, definitely go for it. The pros definitely outweigh the cons here and you won't regret it. Either way, that's my pros and cons list for the Pixel 3a. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video, subscribe for weekly Android content, check out my merch for some awesome Android goodness, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Kapow!